You wake up one morning and the thought arrives uninvited, crystal clear. You want to disappear, not dramatically, not with explanation or ceremony, just ... vanish. Delete your social media accounts. Stop answering messages. Fade into a life where no one knows your name or your history or what you're supposed to be. And here's what makes it unbearable: you can't even explain why. There's no trauma you can point to, no specific betrayal, no catastrophic failure. You're just exhausted by the sheer weight of being perceived, of performing, of maintaining the elaborate fiction of who you've become in other people's eyes. So you judge yourself. You think, I'm ungrateful, selfish, running away from responsibility. People depend on me. People care about me. What kind of person abandons everything without explanation? And beneath that judgment, there's a darker fear that this desire to disappear means something is fundamentally broken in you. That you're not built for connection, for community, for the basic human project of existing among others. You ask yourself in moments of quiet desperation, why do I want to erase myself from everyone's awareness? Why does the idea of complete anonymity feel like oxygen when I'm suffocating? But what if I told you that this desire to disappear silently isn't pathology's philosophical awakening? That what you're experiencing isn't escape from life, but escape from a particular prison you didn't even know you were inhabiting? Let me explain something that will reframe everything. For years, maybe your entire adult life, you've been operating under a form of existence that Heidegger called Das Man, the they self. You've been living as the person that others expect, need, and recognize. Every interaction has been a performance of this constructed identity. Every choice filtered through an invisible committee of judgments. What will they think? How will this look? Does this align with who I'm supposed to be? You thought this was just normal social existence? You called it maturity, responsibility, being a good person? But here's what you didn't realize. You've been slowly suffocating under the accumulated weight of other people's perceptions, interpretations, and projections. Every time someone interacts with you, they're not really seeing you. They're seeing their version of you, their needs reflected back, their expectations confirmed or denied. And you, in your compulsive accommodation, have been contorting yourself to fit these countless mirrors. You've been performing continuity with a self that was constructed years ago, maintaining coherence with decisions and identities that no longer represent whatever is actually alive in you. The exhaustion you feel isn't laziness. It's the bone-deep fatigue of living as an artifact in someone else's museum of relationships. Nietzsche understood this when he wrote about the prison of social roles and the courage required to become who you actually are, rather than who you've been designated to be. Kierkegaard saw it too: the despair of living in borrowed clothes, of being a self-determined entirely by external relations rather than internal truth. They recognize that most people spend their entire lives as characters in other people's stories, never asking whether they consent to the role they've been assigned. Think of it like this. Imagine you're an actor who's been playing the same character for years. At first, the role felt exciting, generative, meaningful. You inhabited it fully. But gradually, imperceptibly, something changed. The character didn't grow or evolve. The script just kept demanding the same performances, the same emotional beats, the same predictable responses. And now, years later, you can't remember the last time you did something that the character wouldn't do. You can't remember the last time you felt genuinely surprised by your own response to something. You've become so skilled at being this character that you've forgotten there was ever an actor underneath. And here's the truly suffocating part. Everyone around you loves the character. They've built their understanding of reality around this character's consistency. They've made plans, formed expectations, constructed entire relationship frameworks based on the character continuing to behave predictably. To suddenly break character, to reveal that there's an actor underneath who's exhausted and confused and doesn't actually align with any of this, that would feel like a betrayal. It would destabilize everyone's carefully maintained understanding of who you are and what you mean to them. So you keep performing. But the effort required increases exponentially. Every interaction becomes exhausting because you're not spontaneously responding anymore. Consulting the characters, established patterns, making sure your behavior remains coherent with the accumulated history of this performed self. This is what happened to you. The desire to disappear isn't about running away from people. It's about escaping from the prison of having been perceived, interpreted, and fixed into a specific shape by countless interactions over time. You don't want to hurt anyone. You don't hate your life. You're not depressed in the clinical sense. You're experiencing something more philosophical. The unbearable claustrophobia of having become a static object in other people's consciousness, while something undefined and fluid still moves within you, suffocated and unseen. Now, if you've been resonating with this so far, maybe it's time to consider staying for what comes next. We explore these depths every single week. You know where the button is. Let me give you an analogy that might illuminate what's actually happening. Imagine you're a river that was once wild and meandering, changing course with seasons and storms, carving new paths through stone, flooding and receding according to some internal logic. But then, gradually, humans built infrastructure around you. They constructed embankments to keep you in a specific channel. They built bridges at precise intervals based on where you currently flowed. They established cities and farms that depended on you maintaining your current course. They created elaborate systems, economic, social, architectural law, calibrated to your present configuration. And here's the critical part. They did this with good intentions. They weren't trying to imprison you. They were just responding reasonably to where you were, building their lives in relationship to your present form. But over time, all this infrastructure became incredibly rigid. Now, if you tried to change course naturally, the way rivers do, you'd destroy everything. Homes would flood, bridges would collapse, entire systems of meaning and survival would fail. So you stay in your channel. You suppress the natural impulse to shift and explore and respond to your own internal dynamics. You become a utility, predictable, manageable, safe. And everyone praises you for your reliability. What a good river, they say. So consistent, so dependable. We can build our whole world around this river because it stays where it belongs. But you, the actual living waters, start to experience something strange. You notice that your current no longer moves with the same vitality. There's stagnation in places. The defined channel, which seemed like maturity and purpose at first, now feels like a concrete prison. You watch other water rain, groundwater, tributaries flow with chaotic freedom, following gravity and intuition and the path of least resistance, and something in you aches with recognition. That's what water is supposed to do. That's what you were before you became infrastructure. And then one day, you have a thought that feels both terrifying and necessary. What if I just stopped flowing through this channel? What if I sank into the ground and emerged somewhere else entirely? Somewhere without embankments and bridges and cities, depending on my predictability. Somewhere I could move according to my own nature instead of maintaining coherence with everyone's expectations. Once your eyes adjust to this recognition, you realize something profound. The desire to disappear isn't about destroying yourself. It's about dissolving a particular fossilized version of yourself that exists in other people's perceptions. It's about escaping from the tyranny of biographical continuity, the exhausting demand that today's you remain consistent with yesterday's you, which must remain consistent with the you from 5 years ago, which must honor the promises and patterns established by the you from a decade ago. This is what's happening when you fantasize about disappearing. You're not suicidal. You're not even necessarily unhappy with your actual life circumstances. You're experiencing what Heidegger would call the call of authentic existence, a profound summons to stop living as they self and start inhabiting your own existence without the mediating filter of social performance and accumulated identity. Now, here's where most people make a catastrophic mistake. They think, okay, I need to make a dramatic change. I'll quit my job, end my relationships, move to a new city, reinvent myself completely. They chase disappearance through action, through destruction, through some grand gesture of liberation. And what happens? They discover that they've brought the real prison with them. Because the embankments aren't actually external, they're internal. They're the deeply conditioned habit of measuring your every response against how it will be perceived. What it means about your character, whether it's consistent with who you're supposed to be. You can move to Thailand, delete your social media, change your name and still find yourself performing for an imaginary audience, still monitoring yourself for coherence with some approved self-concept, still experiencing that suffocating feeling of being trapped in someone else's story. The solution can't be escape, because wherever you go, you take with you the habit of living as a performed identity. The embankments are internal now. You've internalized the watchers. This is the trap that swallows most people who feel this way. They either make dramatic external changes that fail to address the real problem, or they suppress the desire entirely and resign themselves to decades more of suffocating performance. Both paths lead to a kind of death, one through chaos, one through slow stagnation. So, what's actually needed? Something far more subtle and far more radical than escape? What's required isn't disappearance, but a different relationship to being seen. Not invisibility, but a kind of transparency, where you stop trying to control what others perceive. Where you let the character die without destroying the relationships, where you become genuinely unknowable again, even to yourself. There's a term for this in existential philosophy: authentic being toward death. It sounds morbid, but it's actually about something liberating. It's about living with the recognition that you're not a fixed entity, not a coherent character, not a stable object that can be known and defined. You're a process, a becoming, a continuous emergence that can't be captured in any final interpretation. And when you genuinely inhabit this reality, something extraordinary happens. Other people's perceptions of you lose their tyrannical power. Let me describe what this new state actually feels like, because it's not what you think. It's not dramatic. It's not a personality transformation. It's not becoming cold or distant or uncaring. It's more like this. You're in a conversation, and someone references what you're like or the kind of person you are, and instead of feeling that familiar, claustrophobic panic, the sense that you need to either confirm or correct their perception, you just let it exist. Their version of you floats. They're like a story someone is telling, and you feel no particular investment in its accuracy. It's not that you're detached or dissociated, it's that you've stopped trying to manage their version of you. And if you're still here, you already know this isn't surface-level content. Consider subscribing if you want to keep going deeper into these territories. This state has a quality of profound restfulness. For the first time in years, maybe in your life, you're not expending constant energy on coherence maintenance, you're not frantically checking whether your current behavior aligns with your historical pattern, you're not performing continuity, you respond to situations as they arise, from whatever is present in this moment. And there's a fluidity, an improvisational freedom that feels like being genuinely alive for the first time. Here's what makes this different from the old state. The old state required constant self-monitoring to maintain the performed identity. You were always asking, is this consistent with who I am? What does this choice say about me? How will this be interpreted? Every action was filtered through this exhausting meta-level of identity management. In this new state, you're not maintaining anything, you're just responding. And yes, you still have patterns and tendencies and a kind of continuity, but it's emergent rather than imposed. It arises naturally from your actual organism rather than from adherence to a fixed self-concept. The difference is subtle but revolutionary. In the old state, you experienced yourself as an object that needed to be kept consistent. In the new state, you experience yourself as a process that simply unfolds according to its nature. And here's the paradox. When you stop trying to control how you're perceived, when you allow yourself to become genuinely unknowable and fluid, people actually see you more clearly because they're finally encountering your actual presence rather than encountering your performance of the character they expect. Some relationships will end, especially those that were entirely based on you maintaining a particular role. But the relationships that remain become strangely more intimate, more honest, more alive. Now, I must warn you about something that might make you doubt all of this. You might think this sounds rather lonely. You might imagine that living without the security of a fixed identity, without the coherence of a maintained character, means drifting in some cold existential void where no real connection is possible. You might fear that what I'm describing is just sophisticated dissociation or spiritual bypassing, a way of avoiding genuine intimacy by hiding behind philosophical concepts about fluidity and unknowability, and I want to validate that fear because it's not entirely unfounded. There is a kind of pseudo-philosophical detachment that people use to avoid vulnerability, and it does feel cold and empty and ultimately isolating. But that's not what I'm describing. Here's what you need to understand. The performed identity, the carefully maintained character you've been exhausting yourself to sustain, that actually prevents genuine intimacy. Because when you're constantly managing your image, monitoring your consistency, ensuring you're perceived correctly, you're not actually available for authentic encounter. You're too busy controlling variables. Real intimacy requires that you show up without knowing in advance what you'll say or do or reveal. It requires spontaneity, vulnerability, the willingness to be surprised by your own response. The state I'm describing isn't cold. It's actually the only way real warmth becomes possible. When you stop performing coherence, you become genuinely present. And presence, it turns out, is what people have been hungry for all along. Not your character, not your maintained identity, but the actual living presence of someone who isn't constantly calculating their next move in the game of identity management. Let me tell you about someone who embodied this perfectly. Marcus worked in corporate leadership for 15 years. Successful by every conventional measure, senior vice president, well compensated, respected by peers, known for his strategic thinking and calm authority, he had a reputation. People would say things like, Marcus is the kind of person who, and everyone knew exactly what kind of person he was. Decisive, analytical, unflappable, under pressure, a certain type of leader. For years, Marcus inhabited this identity naturally. It wasn't a costume. It emerged from genuine aspects of his personality and approach, but then something shifted. He couldn't identify when exactly it started, but gradually he noticed that every meeting, every email, every interaction required a subtle effort of alignment. He'd notice himself about to respond to something, then pause internally and check, is this response consistent with who Marcus is? Would the strategic, analytical, unflappable version of me say this? The performance wasn't conscious exactly, but it was exhausting. And increasingly, he noticed aspects of his actual responses that didn't fit the pattern moments of uncertainty. Intuitive leaps that couldn't be justified analytically, times when he just wanted to say, I don't know, instead of providing decisive strategic direction. But the identity was so established, so relied upon by his team and organization, that deviating from it felt like betraying everyone's expectations. Then came the moment that changed everything. It wasn't dramatic. He was in a leadership team meeting, and someone asked him a question about strategy for a new product line. The old Marcus would have had a framework ready, would have synthesized the situation into 3 clear points, would have projected calm certainty. But in that moment, Marcus just felt tired. Tired of the performance. Tired of maintaining consistency with a version of himself that no longer felt genuine. So he said, I don't know. I've been trying to force some strategic clarity on this, but honestly, I'm just confused. The variables don't add up to any coherent picture for me. The room went silent, not hostile, just surprised, because this wasn't the pattern. This wasn't the character they knew. And Marcus felt something remarkable, relief, profound, almost tearful relief. Not because he'd been hiding his confusion, he'd been hiding from it himself. Not because he was finally being honest with others, he was finally being honest with himself. He'd allowed an actual response to emerge instead of consulting the established character. What happened after that was subtle but revolutionary. Marcus didn't quit his job or move to a monastery or make some dramatic break. He just stopped trying to maintain consistency with the old identity. In meetings, he spoke from whatever was actually present in him, sometimes analytical and strategic. Sometimes confused, sometimes intuitive in ways he couldn't justify, sometimes just silent because nothing felt true to say. Some colleagues were uncomfortable with this shift. They wanted the old Marcus back, the predictable, dependable, strategic authority, but others, the ones he hadn't realized, were also suffocating in their own performed identities, seemed to breathe easier around him. Conversations became more honest. Decisions became more creative because people weren't just consulting established frameworks. The work itself became more alive. Marcus didn't disappear. He stopped performing continuity. And the person who emerged in that space was both more limited and more free than the character he'd been maintaining. More limited because he couldn't maintain the fiction of constant strategic clarity. More free because he wasn't expending energy on identity management anymore. He was just responding, moment to moment, from whatever was actually alive in him. This is what's available to you, not escape, not disappearance, not some dramatic break with your entire life, but something far more radical, the death of the character you've been performing, the fossilized version of yourself that exists in other people's perceptions and your own internalized monitoring. If this is landing somewhere deep, you know what to do. Hit subscribe and join us in this weekly exploration of what it means to exist authentically. These conversations don't happen everywhere. Think about it like this. You're a tree that's been growing inside a structure for decades. The structure was built when you were younger, smaller, shaped differently. At first, the structure protected you. It provided support, kept you growing upward, gave you form and direction. But you kept growing. Slowly, imperceptibly, your branches expanded, your trunk thickened, your root system sprawled, and now the structure that once supported you has become a cage. You can feel it everywhere, the places where your natural growth is constrained, where your branches press against rigid walls, where your roots are forced to twist around foundations that were never meant to contain something this vital and alive. Every attempt to grow naturally causes stress. Every expansion threatens to crack the structure. And here's what makes it unbearable. You can't exactly articulate what's wrong. The structure itself isn't evil or oppressive in any obvious way. It's just not built for what you've become. But everyone around you sees the structure as protection, as civilization, as the thing that makes you valuable and acceptable. To them, the structure is who you are. They point to it and say, that's you. They've invested in this structure. They've built their understanding of reality around this particular configuration. So when you feel the claustrophobic pressure, when every attempt at natural growth causes stress and constraint, you think, something must be wrong with me. Normal trees don't outgrow their structures. Healthy trees are grateful for the support. Why am I so ungrateful, so restless, so unable to simply be content within what's been provided? But from inside the structure, in the pressure and the darkness and the increasing sense of suffocation, you can't see what's happening. You can't see that the structure is cracking. Slowly, inevitably, your growth is breaking down the walls that once defined and protected you. It feels like you're destroying something, like you're being destructive, selfish, dangerous. But if you could see from outside, you'd recognize this is not destruction. This is a process as natural as metamorphosis. The structure served its purpose. It was necessary. But you've outgrown it, and no amount of self-constraint, no amount of disciplined suppression of your natural expansion will change that fundamental reality. You can't make yourself small enough to fit comfortably anymore. And here's what the desire to disappear actually is. It's the intuition that you need to break free from this structure. Even though breaking free means shattering something that others depend on for their sense of stability and meaning, you're not actually trying to erase yourself. You're trying to dissolve the architectural prison of who you've been designated to be so that what you actually are can finally emerge. This is what's happening to you right now. You are in the middle of this process. The claustrophobia, the exhaustion, the desire to vanish, these aren't symptoms of failure or dysfunction. They're signs that you've outgrown the structure of your performed identity, and something in you knows that the only way forward is to let that structure collapse. It feels like dying because something is dying. The character is dying. The predictable, knowable, manageable version of you that exists in other people's minds and your own internalized surveillance that must die. And you can't control how this death unfolds. You can't make it comfortable or neat or comprehensible to everyone who's built their understanding around the old structure. You can only allow it. So, what do you actually do with this? How do you navigate the territory between suffocating performance and chaotic dissolution? First, understand that there's no technique to force this transition. Any attempt to deliberately engineer your own authenticity becomes just another form of performance. You can't achieve genuine spontaneity through disciplined practice. You can't become unknowable by following a method. The entire project requires a kind of reverse engineering of effort, not doing more, but relaxing the constant doing that's been exhausting you. But there are things you can do that create conditions for this shift. Stop performing continuity. This is concrete and specific. The next time someone references what you're like or what kind of person you are, resist the compulsion to confirm or correct their perception. Let it exist without managing it. The next time you're about to respond to something, notice if you're consulting your established pattern first. Notice the pause where you check for coherence. And just skip that check. Respond from whatever's present, even if it contradicts who you're supposed to be. Practice being genuinely unknowable to yourself as much as others. When someone asks what you think about something, see if you can resist the urge to provide a coherent, fully formed position. Sometimes, the truest answer is "I don't know yet." Sometimes, you're genuinely multiple contradictory impulses at once. Stop resolving everything into false clarity. Pay attention to the quality of your attention in interactions. Notice when you're monitoring yourself from outside, when you're watching yourself perform rather than simply being present. That meta level of self-observation is the prison. You can't force it to disappear, but you can notice when it's operating and choose not to give it authority over your responses. Let relationships end if they're entirely based on the character. Some people are only interested in the performed version of you. Some connections only work if you maintain the expected role. When you stop performing, these relationships will naturally dissolve. This will be painful. Let it be painful. The pain is what guarantees the authenticity of what remains. Stop comparing your internal complexity to other people's performed simplicity. Everyone you meet is also exhausted by their own impermanence. Everyone is also infinitely more complex and contradictory than they allow themselves to show. Your recognition of this doesn't make you special. It makes you honest about a universal condition. And here's the critical thing to stop doing. Stop trying to escape through dramatic external change. The fantasy of disappearing to a new city, a new country, a new identity, that's just another form of identity performance, just with a different character. The prison isn't your job or your relationships or your city. It's the habit of living as a coherent, manageable, predictable object. You can't run from that because you take it with you. Here's the paradox that might unlock everything. You cannot become authentic by trying. Authenticity isn't an achievement or a state you attain through effort. It's what remains when you stop performing coherence. It's what emerges naturally when you're no longer expending energy on identity maintenance. The way forward isn't through more doing, it's through radical permission to stop doing what's been exhausting you.